Okay, so we're going to get started here. This particular webinar, excuse me, is on an extremely important topic. And when I say important, it's probably important topics that you will ever listen to as an attorney, or if you're a law student, or regardless of what your status is. It's really what makes certain people successful and others not. It's why someone like Trump can be president and other people not. It really, and again, I'm not saying that political reasons, but it's a characteristic that separates people that are the best entrepreneurs, that are the best attorneys, that are the best really in the relationships, the best at anything. And this topic, by the way, is something that the reason it's so important is it's something that most attorneys don't do. And the few ones that do are very successful, but most people aren't, even though what I'm going to talk about is really one of the most important things and really the only thing for an attorney to do. And it's more than what the title of this suggests. It's actually far more deeper than that. And when you finish this today, regardless of what law school you went to, going to law school might actually hold you back. No, but regardless of what law school you went to, regardless of the firm you're in right now, regardless if you're not in a firm, regardless if you're employed or unemployed, this is going to help you. And it could actually change the course of your life. And people I've shared this with, and it has. And this is a lot of some even self-improvement things go into this, but this is an extremely important topic, especially if you want to be an attorney, or you are an attorney and wondering why your career is going nowhere, and what you need to do, or it's going somewhere, but not fast enough, and what you need to do to become a very successful attorney. And I just want to say at the outset, over the past, I've met some very successful attorneys, people that are doing the work they want. For one, whether it's a judge, I met a judge yesterday that is very accomplished and is doing what he wants to do at a young age. But even if you want to be financially successful, there are attorneys out there that get paid guarantees from law firms of $5 or even $10 million a year in some cases. There are attorneys out there that make $20-30 million a year with their own practices. You can be as successful as you want to be in this profession. It opens up so many doors, and you have to know about what I'm going to talk about today. And you have to actually live it and understand it, and understand what the converse or opposite of it is, which is what most attorneys are. So you're going to understand if you're going to be the type of attorney today, it's up to you. But if you are the type of attorney, you're going to have a career that's middling and never really amounts to anything. And honestly, that's what happens to probably more than half, if not more, attorneys. So I'm going to help you hopefully avoid that and understand what you need to do and the mindset that makes this happen, which is extremely important. This is a live webinar today. And so that means that this webinar, I will give the presentation. And then after the presentation, we'll take a short break for a few minutes, and then I'll come back and answer not live calls, answer questions, which you can put in the chat. All the questions are anonymous because people like protect their anonymity in the legal profession. But I will hopefully be able to answer any question, whether it's about this webinar or any questions you may have about your career. And usually the questions that you don't think you should ask are the best questions. And so hopefully we hope to learn about some of this. I've been doing this, as I said, for over 25 years. I've also watched people that I practice with, very few of them become successful, watching people fail, watching people succeed. And this, what I'm going to talk about, is really the only thing that makes them successful. And as I said earlier, it doesn't matter where you went to law school. It doesn't matter anything. But most of the time when I see people that are unemployed, when I see people that are having bad careers, when I see people that are see law, it's all about this. But if they understand what I'm going to talk about, then even if they fail, and most people, by the way, fail, most people go through ups and downs in their career. But as long as you have this characteristic, you will continue to rise and do very well. This is an example. This is a little bit personal things. But when I was about 10 years old, my stepfather was dying of cancer. He had actually gotten cancer because he used to have this position when he was growing up and young in Toledo, Ohio, where he was spraying literally pesticides that cause cancer on trees with a giant hose. And it's part of his job working for the city. But after years of had many organs removed, all this chemotherapy, and as he was dying, he was looking for solutions. The doctors couldn't give him any more solutions because there were none. And when people are in that situation, they're dying, someone's telling them they're dying, they typically will not want to believe it. They'll think there's something wrong with the doctor. It's very common, and they need to find something better. So a lot of times people will look for solutions that aren't medical in nature. They'll look for anyone that gives them some sort of belief that helped them. And so finally they found someone that told them that this cancer, which is at that point was lethal, her body had it, and that it was curable. I remember we drove outside of town, very far, but a very kind of rural area in Mount Clemens, Michigan. And there was a doctor, probably not a medical doctor, but some sort of doctor that was working out of his house. And he promised he'd develop the solution that if you drank it would cure your cancer. The doctor feigned a lot of interest in caring, one desire to help, and said he had a unique solution for this cancer. And my mother and stepfather took probably a lot of money, the good portion of money that they had, and they filled up several paper lunch bags, and they'd given it to this doctor. And then they took this stuff home, and believing that things were turning a corner, my stepfather drank it consistently, and my mother fed it to him because he was sick consistently, and they were very excited, and they kept thinking, oh, this little thing makes it think he's feeling better. But eventually he just got so sick he had to be taken to the hospital, could no longer function. And then as they realized that wasn't working, my mother kept looking for solutions to try to cure this cancer. And then she found some religious group that she could donate to. And this Catholic group, even though we were Catholic, and they said they had this piece of liver wood, no larger than a tiny tip of a toothpick, that was apparently from the cross of Jesus when he died, and could cure cancer. So they decided, and they would leave this with you. Of course, you couldn't own the shard, but they said it would resolve a miracle, but still he died. And even at the age of 10 years old, I realized that pieces of Jesus' cross and strange solutions and things didn't make any sense. But what do you do when things are hopeless? But this is a perfect example of how people make money by taking advantage of this rule that I'm about to share with you. It can be used for good, it can be used for bad, but this is something that you need to understand, because obviously this doctor sitting in this house, coming up in these miracle potions, is using this rule. It's no different than someone trying to sell you vitamins, telling you they will change your life. And this is how a lot of people become very wealthy. I'll talk to you more about this in a little. So using this rule has ethical concerns, as I said. I think a lot of people have been in very desperate situations and resulted to doing things that maybe were against their better judgment, but they thought would help them. I've been in desperate situations. I hired an accountant not too long ago to help me as an expert witness, and it was a worst case I was in. And I had known him for several years. He seemed interested in what he did. And me personally, he told me that I needed his help as a witness to get some accounting done. And he told me that for $45,000, he would help me for the duration of my case and do everything necessary for me to get through this divorce. He acted like my friend. He met with me a few times. He told me he'd written a book about this, which when I looked at it, and my attorney looked at it, was basically just a bunch of copies of statutes with nothing interesting on it. But he just basically wrote a book, and I felt like he would do a good job. I trusted him. So I gave him $45,000. And then a week or so after that, I called him and told him I had a hearing coming, and I really needed him to attend this hearing. And at this point, he had already been paid and he'd done all the work. He hadn't done any work. When I asked him to come to this hearing, he said he would do it by phone and be available for an hour when I needed him. And I told him it was an all-day hearing and he needed to be present for it. And then to my astonishment, he screamed F off and slammed down the phone, and then sent me a letter that's in his contract with me, said he could withdraw at any time. and that he would not recommend their money. And so I found someone else. But a few months later, I met with him. I told him he would sue me if I didn't refund his money. I told him I hired him because he seemed like he cared about me and the work he did. And in response, he said something that I honestly couldn't believe. I never heard someone say something like this, but upon reflection, I realized this sort of thing is common with a lot of people. He said, it's all an act, and all I care about is money. He then tried to negotiate with me how much money you would pay back. And he told me that my time suing him, hiring lawyers, and everything price, and I should accept a lowball settlement off from him. He said he'd done this in a lot of people and threats, because of threats to his life. He had to hire a security guard to sit outside his house each night, and cameras all over his property to protect himself. But he followed this rule as well. Every attorney needs a certain quality that I'm going to talk to you about in a second, but most businesses like ours have ongoing legal issues that we need to solve. And an in-house attorney, like if you ever want to go in-house, the job of an in-house attorney is really to understand the company's legal position and fight it or stand up for it and defend it. And this in-house attorney that I hired, and this is actually common for a lot of in-house attorneys, he figured out an argument against whatever we were trying to do. So instead of arguing on behalf of the company, like saying, this is why you can do this, he would construct complex arguments against whatever the company was trying to do. And it was if we hired opposing counsel to work inside of the company, not the other way around. And I will say at the outset that this particular way that in-house counsel acts, and it's actually very common because there's a CYA, cover your ass mentality among a lot of in-house attorneys. But this is the exact reason that a lot of lose their jobs and don't work out, because companies and the people working in them and the CEOs are looking for solutions so they can make money, not so someone stands in the way of everything they're trying to do. And so this particular attorney was let go, meaning I believe, was told he didn't like the way he was and acting, and became angry, didn't understand the rules. And this is very common for attorneys. A lot of them don't understand what their clients and others, attorneys inside the firm, including people that they're mentoring and so forth, seek for them and desperately want. And this is really the most basic requirement that any attorney should have. If a young attorney is fired, a lot of times it's because they don't understand this rule and they don't follow it. And this particular characteristic, as incredible as it sounds, and I don't understand why, but it's not taught in law schools either. What I'm going to talk to you about today, it's not law school don't teach it. I mean, it should be the number one thing that a law school teaches, but they don't. But when you watch a lot of movies and books and things about the best attorneys, it's always this characteristic that they're talking about, and it's what the movies are about all the time. And so if you don't have this characteristic, it's going to hold you back. And if you don't have it, it's going to destroy your career. It's going to law firms where the people no longer have this. It destroys them, and it prevents so many careers from ever starting. And the presence of this, though, makes really incredible things happen. Everything a law firm touches, everything a candidate touches, everything really turns out well. And so this is very important. Years ago, I hired an out-of-state law firm, and I'll tell you an example of kind of how this works if you're not doing it. But years ago, I hired this law firm, and it was a stupid case against foreign employees, against who became a competitor and then started posting all these things and sell forms and things under a false name, which is pretty funny. But the law firm that I hired consisted of attorneys. They had incredible pedigrees from the best law schools, all sorts of honors at these law schools. But this law firm, it was odd, only 5 attorneys with all these incredible characteristics. And I couldn't really understand. I was like, why would this law firm be so small? You'd think that with these incredible scholastic backgrounds and federal clerkships for circuit courts, and they would have lots of big clients, and they certainly wouldn't be representing me in some stupid spot between an employee of mine that I was angry, called me a dumb on different websites, And it just didn't seem like something that they would do, what they were doing. And I just couldn't figure it out. And so I spoke with these attorneys by phone. And when I did, they seemed very dry and they were just pared back statutes to me without a lot of insight. And it was just what? And they, at one point, I hired them to do a very important appeal for the Court of Appeals after I appealed losing something against this person for calling me dumb. And it was just crazy going to the Court of Appeal. I think I should go to the Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court at one point too, which is funny to create work. But they created work for my attorneys. But they were arguing an important appeal for me in front of the State Court of Appeals. And I flew down with another attorney to watch them. I got there and I never met these attorneys, but they all seemed very slow moving and depressed. One of them told me that something about someone's family being very depressed. He was depressed about that. And there was not a lot of energy there, that it was just people just moping around. And so when these attorneys got up to argue this appeal, my attorney, which I thought there was a lot of stuff to argue that it was wrong that this former employee called me dumb, that he only argued for about 6 to 20 minutes of the time allotted. And then he just sat down. And when he was talking up these 6 minutes, he seemed a little bit nervous. His collar was halfway up while he talked. And he also seemed disorganized, which I couldn't understand that someone with these kind of character-based incredible background would be acting like. And then the other side, this other attorney got up with high energy, very, well-dressed, walking around, making very impassioned arguments and argued for the full 20 minutes and was very persuasive. And then I went out with these attorneys after the oral argument, and all these attorneys were doing that. I'm not saying it's all they were doing. And frankly, they were nice people and I liked them, but they were complaining about their clients and why their clients were wrong. And when I went out to talk to these attorneys, they had pretty nice offices overlooking this bridge with all these bats in it. I knew it doesn't, you probably figured out, but I watched this firm, it was in the South Bay. I watched this firm shrink and move into smaller offices and just dissipate. And this firm what was happening to them is the same thing that happens to everyone that doesn't have this characteristic. And it's missed, glossed over. People don't understand it. Prevents attorneys from succeeding. It's more important, by the way, this characteristic where you went to law school and where you're working. Any other thing that you may think holds you back, this is more important than anything. And if you lack it, it's just most attorneys lack it for that reason. Most of them never reach it. I don't know why this characteristic is not emphasized, and I don't understand it, but here's some mistakes that attorneys make during job interviews and on their resumes, which show a complete misunderstanding of this characteristic. They miss the boat 100%. So this week I interviewed, for example, this is not this week, it was not too long ago, an attorney for a position with one of the companies. I asked her what she knew about the company. She said she had heard of it. That's not BCG, it was another company. When I asked her about her long-term objectives, she said things that had nothing to do with the job. She then started asking questions about her salary, remote work, other things like that. And I didn't offer a job. And I didn't understand how someone like this could represent me, knowing nothing about the job or the company and what's going on. But this sort of thing happens all the time. An example, spoke recruiter about a candidate who couldn't get a job. Same thing, major firm trying to move back to the city where this person's from, which actually, if you're trying to go back to a city where you're from, if you're working in Chicago and you want to move back to St. Paul, Minnesota or something, it's usually very easy to get a position. Or if you're working in a major firm and you go back to a small place. But in these interviews, when she was asked if she had any questions, and she would ask things about whether the firm would pay relocation expenses, give her a bar stamp, prorated bonus, and so forth, if she leaves before receiving a bonus. And by the way, just as an aside, I will tell you that you don't ask questions about compensation, relocation, vacation, bar stipends, all that stuff. And when you're interviewing, your only job when you're interviewing, this is just decides to get the job or to get to the next interview. the last thing in the world you want to do is talk about this stuff. You can negotiate it after the firm offers you something, but you don't ask it then. And I've seen firms drastically increase their offers after people get them. They like them. So this particular woman was doing that. And when she does that in her screening interviews, she doesn't do callbacks, and she does it in her second interviews, then she doesn't get offers. And this particular attorney also didn't understand this rule. Same thing, talked to a senior attorney with no business in a very niche practice area. At the same time, she talked about how she knew that there was a lot of demand for attorneys that were very similar to her with her background. She said she wanted to leave her law firm, not particularly because there was anything wrong that she wasn't liking about the firm itself, but she'd read some bad reviews of her firm and so thought maybe she should move because she read some bad reviews. She said she wanted a part-time position where she could potentially work reduced hours. And she didn't really care about what she was doing. She didn't talk about any of that for clients or anything else. And she's very senior, meaning like 20 years out, something along those lines, maybe 15, will never make partner. And she could because she's got background. Other attorneys that make this mistake, and I hope that you benefit from what I'm going to tell you right now if you're making this, but people on their resumes, I like it. I don't understand it. It's getting better because we have a newsletter at DCG that has like 600,000 subscribers. And so I've written about this many times. I know that 600,000 people don't read the newsletters when they go out. Most people don't read all newsletters, but I've certainly said this enough times, but people's resumes contain all these statements. It's very common about their political affiliations, about sometimes they will put their preferred pronouns on their resume, which again, I don't have a problem with people calling themselves one thing or another, but you don't want to invent something that you should do. But you don't want to make an issue out of a lot of these things, your sexual orientation, your religious beliefs, and all that sort of thing on your resume. It's just, you certainly doesn't help you to announce that if you're whatever religion, it's not, people shouldn't, again, I don't have a problem with it. And I think you should be proud of these things, but you typically want to limit your resume to very professional things. You just have to do it to get in the job. And these other aspects you can certainly be, but it's just, you want to be as professional as possible and make people consider you just based on your professional accomplishments. And when people try to get into law firms, they will often spend a lot of time in the resume. They'll talk about pro bono work, which has nothing to do with what the firm needs to make money. They'll talk about, sometimes they'll actually first, and then they'll wonder why they're not getting jobs. I see this all the time. I talk to people sitting in New York and they're working in Brooklyn or whatever. They're not employed, but they started in a giant firm, and then their resume has all this information about how they did pro bono, then with a line or something, also work in the cabinet department doing M&A. It's just crazy. This stuff doesn't help you. And attorneys that do all these things don't understand it. There's nothing wrong with being whoever you are, but you don't make an issue out of that on your resume. I would, if I was someone that was interested in the NRA, I wouldn't put that on my resume. If I was someone hypothetically that was interested in Trump or Biden, I wouldn't put that on my resume. All this stuff is polarizing. People get into fights and everything about it. So there's law firm partners. There's a lot of this going on as well. So law firm partners are not always just happy and successful because they're not following this rule. In every law firm, there's partners who want to grow the firm. They want to bring on more partners with more business. They want to expand their markets. Other partners don't want this to happen. They feel this may threaten them and make them look bad and undermine their authority and the position they have without growth. So they'll sit there and they'll be negative and and I see this all the time. It's very funny. I call up, I may be working, like this week I was working with a big law firm in LA, and the person who's in charge of the entire firm called me and wanted me to help firm staff an office in another state. And so I called these partners in the other state, and they were slightly negative and nothing positive to say about the firm, and that no one wanted to work there. And yet the firm is a very well-known firm and it's just not true. And they basically were trying to protect a little fiefdom and wanted to do that. This is very common. So there are partners that act that way. There's partners that undermine firms trying to grow. There's partners that are trying to expand the firm and trying to hold it back. You know, this push and pull almost in every law firm. And it just happens there as well. And so partners, again, don't always understand the law I'm going to talk to you about. And then if you are interested, if you are a partner, you already know this, but if you're interested in becoming a partner in a significant law firm, you'll understand that you need to understand that being a partner often is much more difficult than an associate because it can be a catfight where everyone's trying to one-up one another, get credit for client origination, compensation, all this sort of thing. And it's very isolating and compared to being an associate. But the most successful partners are the way they are because they take a counterintuitive method towards all of this, which I'll talk about in a moment. When a recruiter, this is important because it's important for you to understand how people succeed as recruiters. And it's the same sort of characteristic that can make you successful as an attorney or whatever you've done. I've been in this business again for a long time and certainly worked with more than 100, if not a couple hundred or more people that have worked here as recruiters. A lot of them I've seen people succeed and others fail. And a lot of it's very involved when this happens. But if you're good at this job that I do and could be potentially, you can do incredibly well financially. You can finish your first year of law school, join our company, and within 6 months to a year, be just as successful as partners in your law firms. But you have to do this characteristic we're talking about. And when you do it, you can change the course of people's lives and succeed yourself. And so what a good recruiter does, if you use a recruiter, it doesn't have to be BCG. I mean, I don't care. I encourage you to. So you're looking for a job, but it's certainly up to you. You need to find someone that works for you. But good recruiters, what they do is they understand how they can bring out the best in their candidates and then how they can show this good side of the candidates to law firms. And a good recruiter also understands that in order to get someone a job, you need to knock on a lot of doors and be persistent. And this, again, just an aside, if you're looking for a job, the dumbest thing you can possibly do is to go on to Indeed or LinkedIn or something and just apply to the same positions that everyone else is. You need to, in most cases, if you're trying to sell the same thing to other people are trying to sell that are finding things on platforms, you're going to have a lot of competition and you're probably going to have a difficult time getting those positions. It's not to say you can't, but you need to often to look at a lot of places and look at places that people aren't looking at. And that's something good recruiters can do. Very few do. And so good recruiter will always push individuals to improve. They'll make a difference. They typically will care about their work. They'll work hard and give up, and they'll try to do whatever they can to get people jobs. I have the situation all the time where recruiters come in and they do very well. When you make a placement, it can be financially rewarding because the firm pays the recruiter. And this recruiter in our company, Dumont, made 3 placements in 1 week. But it was interesting is not how she made these 3 placements. It was that what she did, because these candidates had all been rejected by the law firms when our recruiter initially approached these firms. So think about that. So every single one of them had been rejected. And what does that mean? That means that the law firms said, no, we're not interested. Thank you. And that's it. But she didn't take no for an answer. She followed up with the firms, not right away, which would have been good, but a couple of months later, each then said they were interested in interviewing the candidate. Now, I want you to understand this lesson here because it's very important. Just because the law firm says no to you at one point doesn't mean that if you apply a couple of months later, they're going to have any institutional memory of it. But even if they do, they're going to recognize that you're very interested in that. And the more you apply, the more you look interested, especially if you have the qualifications that make you appropriate to work there. Even if you don't a little bit, they'll be impressed with it. So following up was important in this case. She didn't take no for an answer. Most people, when they get a no, they stop they just quit. They stopped. But this particular person did this. I was actually reading a story the other day. There's this new, I don't know, this Tony Robbins book talking about investments or something. And there was one of the most successful venture capitalists in the country, and the 100 most richest people in the country and the world or something, but got turned down by Stanford Law School 3 times. And eventually we kept talking to them, and then eventually got in. Another one of these super wealthy people, 100 most wealthiest people in the world, that started some other venture capital firm, tried to get a position. And this person was actually an African American. That's the first person and mentioned this Tony Robbins book when he interviews people, but he wanted to work in as an intern investment bank when he was in high school. And so we only hire people that are in college, and kept calling up the jobs. This kind of stuff happens a lot with this persistence. And I just want to let you know value that works. It works for attorneys doing things. It works for everything that supports persistent. And the candidate went in, these candidates got jobs. And when they had normally been rejected, and this particular recruiter went to Harvard Law School, very interested in civil rights law, believes passion in their candidates, spends a lot of time understanding them, lots of time writing long letters about them, brings out the best in them, and presents this to law firms and researches opportunities and just persists and persists. And she does it for everyone. This is like an art form for her doing this. And very few people are like this with the jobs that they do. But this particular recruiter is, and it's awesome. And I'm very impressed. I'm like this as well. And these are the type of people that I want as recruiters in our company, but they're exceptionally hard to find because most attorneys aren't like this, much less people working in my profession. So I lead into something here. I want you to see what people are doing that are employing this as well as people that aren't. So I grew up in Detroit during the crack epidemic. And I grew up outside of Detroit in the suburbs, but everyone from the suburbs, because there's not much going on there, would always drive down to Detroit, and they would big paddle boats on the water where you could go in, and they would have bars and things, and it was fun. And I'd always see kids I knew from high school and high schools that I attended in the past, and other schools when I was younger. And at the time there was this crack epidemic, and it's not the crack. It's like you would think that people are grabbing you and stealing from you. They're actually, these crack addicts were nice. They would approach you often well-dressed the second you got out of the car. And some of them would be bums and ask you for money. But there was also a class of crack addicts that was, like I said, very well-dressed, very smart, often very clean cut. And you would talk to them, or they would come up to you and they would tell you stories about how they were trying to get food for their kids, their wife is at home pregnant, things like that. And then they would also tell you that they were hungry and it was hard to get jobs in Detroit if you were from this background. And they would be engaging because they would talk very well. And so I didn't know at the time, but they were extremely convincing that if you just gave them $20 or something along those lines, they would be perfectly fine. And that's really all they needed. But one evening, a friend of mine decided we would talk to one of these very convincing crack addicts. And he told us a story for at least 30 minutes and about how he was hungry and all this stuff. So my friend and I took him to a store and to buy some food for the family. And he just seemed very uncomfortable at the time. And he told me he needed money and not food. And so you said everyone's hungry. And so we drove to the store and bought him like $40 worth of groceries. And then when I gave it to him, he turned from a very nice person into screaming, just not obscenities or anything, but upset. And then when we got in the car and drove off for getting his groceries, he reached in and threw a submarine sandwich, bought him, and hit the back of the car. But what he was doing, it's very similar to an accountant and other people I've talked to so far, is he was telling me what he thought I wanted to hear, my friend, to get money. And he really didn't want money for food. He wanted it for drugs. He dressed well because this made me trust him. He spun me stories about why he needed help, but there was no substance beneath it. And all he was really trying to do was get drugs. And so I talked to you about recruiters that are successful, but I also, it's interesting in this particular business, at least in this company, because we're very demanding and it's quite unusual the lengths we'll go to. There's nothing really like it, but very few recruiters survive because when you're probably this way to some extent, and hopefully you will change. But most people are just 100% pretty much out for themselves. They are not generally interested in helping other people, whether it's getting jobs, whether it's winning matters a lot of times, if they're attorneys, bringing out the best in others, doing the hard research, following up, and doing everything it takes to succeed. And this is a very rare characteristic. As another aside, when I was practicing law, I once worked for this attorney that was actually hired to work with him. And I sat in my office was next to him, and he had never lost a case. He'd always gotten favorable settlements for his clients, but had never lost a case. And his secretary, who had been with him since he had been a young partner, told me this. And what this guy would do is pretty incredible. He would continue researching every single nook and cranny and get so far into this case, interviews, and that no judge or anybody could keep up with him. And he would always win. And it was amazing. I could talk for hours about what he did, but he just put everything he had into what he was doing and would always win. And so very few people go to these lengths to succeed. Most people care about themselves. They cut corners, and that's how most people operate. So here we're going to talk about some very serious stuff and how it can tell your career and how it can make you extremely successful, and how if you understand all this, which I think you will, it will make a major difference in your career. About 6 months after starting BCG, my father was visiting from Detroit, or maybe he was in Poland. It doesn't matter. And I was out for dinner with he and my wife and her friend. We were in a Greek restaurant in Malibu, which is trajectories, which I'm sure you're familiar with, in the Malibu. But I told him I was just telling these stories. I was very proud of these various attorneys I'd helped get jobs. And I talked about how I'd done everything and how I managed to convince people to hire them and bring out their best. Then again, I'm not the one who got these jobs. The attorneys are. I mean, just they're helping. I take credit for, but they got jobs. And I remember how skeptical my wife initially was of this, because I left the job and nothing, not know anything about it. She could also tell how enthusiastic I was, and she was actually excited for me. And when I was talking about this, my dad just kept saying stuff along the lines of, come on, that's just complete bullshit. All anyone cares about is making money. I don't buy that you're excited for these people one bit. And I was extremely upset. I felt like getting into a fist fight with someone, not certain father, but I just felt a complete disconnect. I felt like, how could someone not share my belief that you have to help people, and it's not necessarily just about money. And then he is successful in what he did in his career, but I felt that he could have been far more successful if he didn't have this sort of belief and just see nothing but me is trying to do nothing but make money. And it's just belief that a lot of people have. It's very common. They believe that the world is more about making money than that is believing in anyone or anything. And lying down to that, I never felt a disconnect and believe it was like that. If you are sick, and I want to make a couple more points here, so I'm going deeper into this, but you go see a doctor, you expect the doctor to listen to what's wrong. You want to tell that doctor what's wrong, even though the doctor probably knows very quickly when few words or not too much time is out of your mouth and they've looked at whatever it is. You want to tell the doctor everything about what's wrong. You would not want that doctor, most cases in your medical care, you would want help for whatever your issue is, and you would want to be heard and seen. So I had a strange experience a few years ago. I went to, in Malibu, where I live, there's a medical clinic that for UCLA, which is UCLA is a great hospital and this medical clinic. And they just hired someone who was a recent medical school graduate. They from a good school in the Midwest, and I think like Chicago, Michigan, something like that. And I was one of this person's first patients, and they were just a general practitioner. And I don't even know that she'd ever been to Malibu or Cal. I spent a lot of time there. So I presented her. I had this lymph node that was like the size of my fist on my neck that was enlarged. I was also very tired. And she started asking me questions when she saw this about how many sexual partners I had and where I might have caught this. And I explained to her that I've been married at that time for almost a decade. I had 3 children. And she still didn't want to believe me. Then she started asking me if I was an IV drug user. And the last time I used, and I told her that not only did I not use drugs, but I don't even drink alcohol. And then she tested me didn't believe me and tested me for sexually transmitted diseases. And I'm assuming she took my blood and did the same thing with drugs. And a few days later, these symptoms got even worse. She sent me away saying she was testing me for STDs and all this stuff. And the symptoms got so bad that I actually had to go to the emergency room and get hospitalized. And I had a fairly serious virus that had taken control of my body. And I got hospitalized, and they pumped me with all sorts of antibiotics. But it was a serious issue that required hospitalization. And I'm someone that had a PhD in these infectious diseases to do all these different tests of what the virus was. And then at the end of it, they had to put what's called a PICC line, which is like this thing going down back of my skin into my artery. I don't know what it was. So they could have someone come over and give me these antibiotics. She should have caught this on the chart, but when she had the different information, but what she was thinking is here's this person in this town that I've never been to. I'm from the Midwest, and maybe there's something else wrong. And this is my thing, so mine went the opposite direction. Then she was more interested, instead of being interested in helping me, I think she was more interested in reaching conclusions that were adverse to my interest. And then she wanted to confirm thoughts that had nothing to really do with me. It's very common, by the way, for people to go to therapy when they're separating or divorcing. And typically, from what I understand, because I've read about it and seen TikTok videos about it, which is fun. But when someone wants to go to therapy, most people, the party requesting therapy, wants a therapist to come in and fix whatever's wrong with the party. They want the therapist to take their side and understand what's wrong with the other person and fix the other person. And it's not the job of most therapists to take one person's side and fix the other person. And it's the same thing. If you want to fix a relationship, you can't hire someone to change someone else. But people do certainly want people on their side. And that would be your own therapist, not a couple's therapist. You need someone who believes to you. It's the same thing. If someone breaks into your house, injures you, and steals your possessions, you're going to call the police, and the police show up and don't believe you. That's going to hurt your feelings, and you're not going to be happy about that. And it just is another funny aside. So you want the police to show up and go after the bad guy and that sort of thing. And this is what everyone wants. But just as an aside, it was funny. I was talking to years ago, this manager. We had an office, we still do, but in India. And the manager was saying, if you call the police in this particular part of India, the police will show up and we'll say, that's interesting. And we'll sit down and we'll expect you to give them lunch if this is like a robbery or something. And then you end up having to eventually pay them for them to go out and find the person on your behalf, which I thought was fun. I'm not saying it's like that all over India, but this is sort of the same. I had a funny experience that last year there was a kid that was Pepperdine University, which is Melbourne near, right across the street. And he drag raced his car down at 2 a.m. and lost control, crashed into 6 people, told 2 of them while being completely sober. And he was just acting stupid. Police came and he told them each of the cars he crashed into, including my own car. And I was sleeping while all this happened. When I got out, I noticed that my car and several others had been crashed into, called the police. And instead of the police, they sent over these people that they have, and this is common in this city, and I'm assuming other places around LA, they have what are called volunteer police, which people that don't carry guns, they drive cars that look like police cars, they're not, they have, say, volunteer on them. And then one of these volunteer guys came over and he thought he was Perry Mason and said that one of these cars could not possibly hit my car because the dent on it was higher than the bumper, the vehicle that hit me and this kid's vehicle that was driving. And so when I pointed out that the car that hit me had gone airborne and was now lodged in a hill, the police officer still didn't want to, it was literally in a hill, powered into a hill and me a sideways hill. So the car was going this way, the car went up and the police officer still didn't want to listen to this. And a few minutes into this, several other police officers showed up. Real police officers saw the argument, and then even the guy that didn't hit all the cars, when he showed up, then there was a massive crowd of neighbors, which is funny. And then the kid explained that he actually hit my car. And so the other police officers that seemed started making fun of the volunteer police officer that had missed all this. And then what was funny is then a few weeks after getting my car fixed, I stepped outside and I found this volunteer police officer getting ready to tow my truck, the tow company. And he said that I had 3 unpaid tickets for an expired license plate tag that he had written. I told him I didn't have an expired license plate, but someone had stolen my tags. And if this guy were a real police officer, he could look this up, meaning that tags weren't expired. Someone had come along and stolen the date, was 2020, whatever. So they weren't expired. He didn't have the ability to look all this up because he wasn't a police officer. And when I angered with him, I said, "You're not towing my car because the tags aren't expired and they've never been expired." He called for backup and said he needed backup. And several police cars, not at least 10, 4 or 5, came running down the street because they thought there was some sort of serious thing going on. Pulled up in front of the house, blocked off the street, and they thought something important was going on. And he explained why he was trying to tow the car. And then the sergeant showed up, ran the tags in my truck, and explained that they couldn't tow it because the tickets never should have been read. This same thing keeps going on, kept going on, but for other reasons. I'm parked in the line too close to the curb. And this particular guy has a vendetta, not on my side. And even more funny, he pulled me over when I was coming home from work and with his yellow flashers. And I was coming home from work and said, "I completely stop," and just started yelling. This is not that important. But I told him they couldn't write me a traffic ticket because he's not a police officer. And this guy dislikes me. I dislike him. And that's example people not disagreeing, which will make sense in a moment. When you're working for anyone, and this is now something that I really want to make sure that you understand because it's going to determine how successful you are working for other people or for clients, is you need to align with your employer's interest. So I'm happy to tell you that I have been fired from a few jobs in my life, and in every single case, and this is probably similar to you if you've ever been fired from a job, it was because my employer didn't believed I was antagonistic to their interest. The first job I was fired from when I was back at 15, I was put into a room with other kids and given a phone list of everyone who lived in the city of St. Clair Shores, Michigan. I had a script about how it was Fireman's Carnival Day, held once a year. I sold tickets to it. I said things like, "We'll have cotton candy for the kids, clowns, popcorn, dunk tank in the 1920s, theme bands, and then we're going to have a petting zoo and goats, pigs, and chickens." And I did this for about 6, maybe even a little less every evening. And one day, a few friends of mine were over and asked me about the job. I picked up the phone and made a random call showing them how I did this using my name. And to my astonishment, my friends thought this was very funny. And soon we were making phone calls and went off script. Instead of a petting zoo, we'd say live executions with the sheriff's thing of the live execution of a death row inmate. I don't know if that's what I did, but I remember making that up. Not smart. And someone was actually shocked to know that they ended up calling the police association because my friends had made calls using my name. I was fired. So again, that's me not acting in the best interest of my employer. not being on their side. I was also fired. This was a good fire that I should have been fired from as well from a valet a year later when I was about 16. What happened is another valet and I were standing around. It was a very slow night, parking cars at this Grosse Pointe Yacht Club. And I told her that my boss, the owner of the valet company, had stolen all my tips after making me work on the 4th of July. It was just the very busiest day there and made hundreds of dollars in tips. And then all of a sudden he walked up to me and told me to give him all my money. I didn't like that. I told her that I was upset about it, didn't like him for that reason. She told her boss. He figured out that I wasn't working in his best interest. He fired me and fired from that because obviously I wasn't representing him. I was talking against his interest, just as the first company I was working against their interest, talking about these executions. And I don't know that I did that. Some friends, but I was 18, spent a summer working as a sanitation worker, me a garbage man. I talked to these people about how I was going to be going away to a good college and how I intended to be successful. All of this stuff did not make the man I was working for feel good about themselves. And I was fired by the boss, and he told me that he had to stick up for the man he worked with, that he worked a book for him. I didn't make them feel good about themselves. And so I had to go. Smart decision. I got home. I told my mother about this. She called him and told him she had no reason to fire me. I had my job back. She'd worked for as an investigator from the Department of Civil Rights and got me my job back. But the reason I lost that job was because I came across as not being on the side of the people I worked with. Subsequent jobs where I was fired, I was essentially fired from the federal clerkship because the judge was of a certain political party, very far on the side of one political party. And I would talk to a court reporter would talk to me about how much she disliked that. And the same thing happened where he found out about these conversations and didn't like it. Didn't get fired, but pretty clearly would have been had I not resigned. So these are some lessons, again, from the clerkship experience. I'll just go into it. I clerked for this federal district judge. The judge I was clerking for, again, was political. There were other people there that were very liberal and disapproved of everything he did. And I spent all my time because there were really only other people besides the judge over there. And all I would hear is about how these politics and everything were. And that it influenced me, and he could see it the way, I thought negatively from because of all this. And so this judge is the one I was working for, the one that was paying me, the one who reviewed my work, the one that would be able to give me recommendations, the one that was really, I was the only reason I was there, and the only person who was advancing was this person, not these other people that were involved in these political parties. This particular guy was also the most influential person. I was in a courthouse with one federal district judge, one magistrate, that was it. And then, so I was spending all my time with the wrong people, and I didn't have the judge's back, even though this is something he needed. Someone who was paying someone to be there and to respect him and to agree with him and to help him and to stand up for him to all these other people that were against him, to represent him in the court, to represent him with the opinions. That was my job. And instead, I wasn't doing it. Then my co-clerk was also very conservative, and she played the game. She avoided the people who didn't support the judge and nothing to do with them. She moved to a neighborhood to be close to the judge, a conservative part of town, a family part that I certainly. So as a result of that, he helped her. He got her a job in a very good firm in Detroit, helped her, he advanced her. And I did the opposite. I was a liability. I adopted the views of the people that didn't support him. I saw him through the eyes of these other people instead of the person that had given me this great opportunity and that had hired me and that had had the opportunity to do all this. I decided to associate with people that were against him, and then I adopted their views. And again, had I not quit, when I realized I was about to get fired within hours, then I certainly would have lost my job and been fired. So I did the right thing by quitting. I wasn't on his side, and I allowed the wrong people to influence me. So when my judge hired me, there was stuff in my resume that suggested I might be a conservative like he was. And at that point, I wasn't really either conservative or a liberal or anything. I had just fallen into different things. And so he had hired me because he felt like I would be on his side, and I wasn't. So this particular point with a clerkship experience, we're getting somewhere right now. And I want to make sure that you grasp what I'm talking about here fully, because it's very important. So the reason for potentially getting fired from a clerkship, which is probably almost unheard of, and I certainly didn't, was because I was not on the side of my employer. How many people are hired by great law firms and get jobs, and suddenly they're not on the side of the people that hire them? They decide to go onto these sites, write bad things about their employer and gossip, talk negatively about people to their peers and stuff. When you've got some employer that's paying you a great salary to help them and to represent them, you're suddenly on the side of someone else that's against the employer. That's just a recipe for basically destroying your career. I don't understand why anyone would do that, but this is what people do. People go into firms and they complain about how bad they are, and how bad the partners are, and carry this toxic attitude. They carry it over to other people that are working in the firm. They carry it over to clients. They carry it over to their friends. It's just bizarre. And this is very par for the course, just like I do with the clerkship. A lot of attorneys do. If you are watching this and are thinking about what's important to you, what kind of people are important to you, you want people that are on your side. You want people that will understand you and stick up for you. That's what a spouse does. That's what friends do. Politicians, social movements, protests. These are all demands that people stick up for what they believe in. People join unions and give them a percentage of their income because they want people that are on their side and fighting for them. People become Democrats or Republicans. Democrats want to fight for social justice and more benefits and equality, and Republicans might want to fight for big business and keeping immigrants out. People support different political parties because they believe they have their back and they're representing them. People join religions because they want to be around people that understand them, that represent them, that give them an identity. People join support groups because they want to feel supported. They join Alcoholics Anonymous and Gamblers Anonymous and all these things because they want people people move to different parts of the country because they want to be closer to people like this. So they want to be in the atmospheres, climates that they feel are supportive to them. People may live in small towns and stay there because they want to be around a supportive people that they feel support them and understand them. And people, when they protest the police, they do so because they feel the law's not on their side. And everybody, there's a fundamental human need. People will get married because they want to have people guaranteed to be on their side. People will do all these things. Sometimes people will live their families their entire lives because they want this. It's very important. The doctor and stepmother and my mother and stepfather hired with a miracle cancer cure was obviously just out for himself. My parents wanted someone on their side. And when my mother, and that was what they wanted, a doctor that would give them something on their side. Same thing with paying someone for a sliver of Jesus's cross, trying to get supernatural forces on their side. When I hired an accountant in this legal case, I was trying to get someone on my side and believe them, but he wasn't. He was on his side. When I hired an attorney to represent our company, I wanted someone on our side to do a good job. But this person was not on our side. They wanted to basically point out the reasons that we couldn't do things. And by the way, when people join in-house jobs, it's very common. I've seen it happen so many times, I can't even tell you. People join in-house jobs from law firms. Then when they join the in-house firm, the firm asks them to research things and help them do things. And they just come back saying it's impossible to do one thing or another. Or they just, every time the company wants to do something, instead of finding a way to do it, they find a way not to do it. And they lose their jobs. And then with this particular person I hired for our company, I learned later that he'd unsuccessfully sought our help and rejected him. So he was looking for a job and he was believed I wasn't a side or whatever and didn't like me. Then I hired this law firm to represent me. In this case, I told you against the attorney that called me, the former employee that called me a dumb. And instead of making arguments for me, they couldn't take anyone's side because they didn't have any passion. You need to have everyone people need to have their backs. And this is very important. It's the key to being good at freaking anything. It's why personal injury attorneys that I know some guy that was the youngest, actually working with him on a search right now, helping him hire attorneys. You're the youngest graduate of Harvard Law School ever. Worked at Gibson Dunn or something, and then became a personal injury attorney. Now incredibly successful there. People need to have others that have their back. This is what I do, by the way. I have your back. That's what I'm doing. I'm doing this on because I'm trying to help you, and I have your back. And everything I can do for my candidates, do whatever I can. The average recruiter is more like a crack addict, and average salesman's kind of like the crack addict I told you about. They'll say and do whatever they need to do easy money, but that's it. They can tell you the right things, but they're never really on your side. They're on their side. And they don't care about you or have their back. They just want to get something from you. And most attorneys that are seeking jobs don't understand what's really important to the employer. You don't understand most likely what's most important to the employer, because the people that you're working for, all they want is for you to have their back and feel like you're on their side. They want you to be their advocate. They want you to look up to them. They want you to respect them. They want you to say nice things about them to other people. But this is what most people don't do. Very few attorneys do this. The ones that do, if they do good work and other things and they're able to get clients, and that's how you get clients, by making clients feel like you're on their side. This, by the way, could change the course of your career and your life. This is all clients want. Clients want to feel like somebody understands them, like listens to them, like that doctor did it. And then they want to understand and that they want to believe that you are passionate about them, that you will help them, that you won't overcharge them, that you'll get them the best results, that you represent them well. This is what clients want. This is what your employers want. But very few people do this. Again, this is the entire key to being successful as an attorney and getting clients and to be a good attorney. This is all it takes. You have to be on other people's side. They need to believe like you have their back. And if they think you have the back, whether it's an employer or a client or anybody, they're going to hire you, and they're going to not want to fire you because you understand them. You want to help them. You're not listening to people saying negative things about them. You're not going to tolerate things. You're going to be like the conservative judge who hired me and thought I had his back, and you're going to stand behind that. If people are talking trash about him, you're going to stick up to them and tell them why they're full of it. And then he's going to find out about that and like you even more. If you go on interviews and you talk to an employer about what you want, your relocation expenses, you want to work remotely, you want this bonus, you want this type of salary, you're not going to get the job because the person is going to know you're 100% out for yourselves and you're not going to look like someone who doesn't have their back. I had an interesting experience. It was a long time ago. It was like maybe back in 2004. And this guy wanted to move to the U.S. with his partner. And his partner was this man that was starting, in some big job in Centers for Disease Control or something. He wanted to move to the U.S. and he wanted a job working in a recruiting firm. He was coming from another recruiting firm. And I told him at the time, I said, he wanted to work as a manager. I said, I don't really have a job for you, but if you are willing to work at a relatively low rate, 50 or something a year, I'd be happy to have you and allow you to do some work. And he said, that's great, but why don't you, but I know I'm worth a lot more than that. Why don't you talk to me in a year? And why don't I do that for you for a year? And I said, okay. No salary was discussed about what would happen after a year. He started, was incredible. He bonded with everyone. He improved them. He kept very good records. He represented the company very professionally. And at the end of the year, he came and he said, I would like a raise. I said, what do you want? And he said, I want $200,000 a year or something like that. So that's a lot of money. And he said, look at how much money I made you. I've been working 12 hours a day sometimes. I'm doing all this. I'm traveling and doing this. And so I listened to all this and I thought he is wrong. and gave him this raise, 4 times the salary. Maybe it was one or something. But the point of the matter is he had my back. He represented me. He did everything necessary to really make me feel that way. And of course I paid him that. And this is what people will pay you more regardless of what they're paying you now. If you do that well, your clients will stick with you and refer people to you. If you do that well with anything you do, employers or anything, people will stick with you and they'll give you more work. And think about how, I'll come back to that. But if you give people what they want and you make them feel important, they realize you have their back. They want to do things to help you. That's natural. They want to give you whatever they can to help you. If you do the opposite, which would be something along the lines of you don't tell them what they want to hear, you tell them negative things, they're not going to like you. When most attorneys never get business, most of them never find long-term success practicing law. Most of them are underemployed, a lot of them, because they never understand the importance of looking up others. Clients want people that have their back. They don't want to feel like their lawyers overcharging them. They are out for themselves. They don't want to feel like the attorney, they're not behind the causes of their clients. Then this hurts them. They don't believe in their law firms, and instead they sit around and listen to negative rumors and news stories. I'm sure if you're in a law firm, you work in an office, people are stopping by and saying negative things about your firm to you. Many people, partners, will fight for every dollar, not share with their partners. They want to feel like there's a collaborative attitude. And if you're a partner, which for some reason, more than half the people watching this, partners in law firms, are very smart. That's probably why they're successful. But the partners that are successful oftentimes will willingly share fees and things or clients, origination with people that may not even deserve it. Then those other partners feel like they're on their side and with them. Partners that don't succeed are often seem opposed to their clients, partners, and others that they should be advocates for. And you just can't succeed if you don't seem like you're on the side of your employers, partners, and others. It just doesn't work that way. Young attorneys come out of school often believing that they don't want to spend a lot of time working in a law firm. Sometimes the law firms are bad, that they should be doing pro bono work and not representing clients. And then they also try to play devil's advocate on every issue. So sometimes they'll tell partners this is impossible, or this is wrong, or this is unethical. And that hurts them. And you need to really, with your clients, with your employer, you need to take sides and really believe in someone and what you're doing as an attorney. You need to be on the side of whoever the frickin' hires you, whoever is above you and deserves respect. You need to be on their side. And if you go into an interview and you come across to the person interviewing you, you're going to have their back. They will hire you. Firms hire people because they believe they will get along with others and support their objectives, and they'll respect the attorney hiring them. They'll respect the firm. This is just how it works. It's the same thing with clients, what they do. I'll just tell you a quick story. Remember years ago, I had an opening for an HR director in our company, and I probably interviewed like 15 people or maybe more. Not that many, probably 5 people a day over 2 or 3 days. But only one person came in and said, I couldn't believe it. He said, if you hire me, I'm going to have your back. I'm going to do this, that. I'm going to make you look good. I'm going to not listen to employees complain. I'm going to tell them how to better outlook and things. And that particular person would have been a very good hire. I heard someone that was the opposite of that, just because they'd been the former HR director or something at Morrison & Foerster and hadn't been there very long, probably because they didn't do a good job. And that was a mistake. When I speak with attorneys, the kind of questions that I like to ask for my candidates are things like, where did you grow up? Do you have any brothers and sisters? Or when was your last vacation? And you give people, what do you like to do in your free time? All these kind of questions, by the way, are very important because people love to talk about themselves. And you should ask that because it makes them human instead of just a number or a firm or school. And so a lot of this people, when I ask them these kind of questions, they kind of clam up. More so on the East Coast and the West Coast, which is fine. There's different types of people, but nothing could be more critical than being able to share this type of information and finding this out about others, because the more you find out about people and let them invest in telling you about themselves, that the more you do that with others, and you can show people like you're like them and can be trusted, support them, vulnerable, the more they will like and trust you. And everyone wants to be around people that feel like they understand them and look out for them. But very few people have that. And this is another thing that's important to understand. This is especially so for recruiters and how you work with other people and how you represent them. But when I represent law firms, and I represent both law firms and attorneys, I never really want to give people bad news. I won't say things the law firms are likely to not like, and I just don't go into it. There's a lot of things in someone's background that a law firm may not like, but I don't go into it. I want the attorneys to believe I'm on their side. And what I do, instead of telling someone something negative about their background, what I do instead of that, and every attorney, by the way, there's nothing is perfect about anyone's background. I don't tell the law firms. So sometimes there's things in Canada's background that'll make it difficult for them to get jobs. Sometimes there's things for the law firm trying to recruit people. And so that will make it difficult, but I don't tell candidates that there are these things that are negative in your background. I don't tell law firms that there are things that are negative in their background. I know them and they're a factor, but instead I may suggest that certain things be removed from a resume, but I don't tell someone they went to a bad law school or their firm's not good, or they don't have good experience, or people aren't going to like them because they've been unemployed for too long. That's not my job. I want to make people believe I'm their advocate. I take what I've got. And same thing with law firms. I propose solutions. I don't tell the law firm you're too small. You don't have good enough clients. You've got a bad reputation. I don't need to go into that. My job is to be an advocate. And this is what people want. If you tell people things that are negative about themselves, they're not going to feel good about using you. And you have to be an advocate. This is why I feel like I'm doing pretty well in this profession, or I would do if I was practicing law or if I was contract or whatever. And something that law firms don't like, and you're probably aware of this, and employers, they don't like if people have been unemployed for any period of time. And I always thought this was unfair. And in certain markets, like New York City, for example, if you're unemployed, it becomes next to impossible to get hired by the most prestigious law firms. It just says too many things negative about you. And I always thought there must be something that law firms don't like people that are unemployed for so long. What is it about? And is maybe because it wasn't the candidate's fault. Maybe you think I'm unemployed, it's not my fault, and I should still get hired or whatever. But actually, it's much more profound than that. When you're unemployed, especially if you've been unemployed for a long period of time. Now, I'm not criticizing you. Again, it's you, and you've been unemployed for a long period of time. But I'm going to show you, but deep down, what's really going on here. If you've been unemployed for a while, it's showing something that's very significant because you're an attorney or you're a law student. And frankly, anybody can get a legal job in a law firm. There's 35,000 of them. There's tens of thousands of small solos, small law firms, and a few people in addition to that. But if you're unemployed, I'm just putting it frankly to you, honey, you're in business. It shows you can't advance your case. How can you possibly be expected to be a good attorney if you can't sell yourself? And again, I'm not trying to turn you off, because if you are in this category, I'm doing exactly what you don't want to hear, and you will turn off right now. And you should see that feeling, because it's what it is. It's how clients feel and how employers feel when you don't have their back. But if you can't find a job, whether and it's showing maybe you don't want to work, but if you do want to work, it's showing you can't advance your case. You can't sell yourself. How can you possibly win at being an attorney and help your clients if you can't do something as basic as find a job in one of the tens of thousands of law firms and hundreds of thousands of companies and government offices? How can you possibly be expected to advance others' interests if you can't do something as simple as get a job? And you need to be able to convince others. First of all, you need to be able to search and find things and be willing to move. But you need to be able to convince recruiters, employers, and everyone at your value. And if you can't do it yourself, how can you possibly, and again, I'm not trying to be rude here, but I want to bring you the cold hard fact. If you can't be an advocate for yourself and to just find a job, employers can't how can employers expect you to do this for paying clients? Sorry, but figure it out, man. I can help you get a job, but there's lots of ways to get a job. So if you can't do that, how can you possibly be expected to, if you can't represent yourself, then something as basic as this, how can you possibly do this for paying clients? I don't understand it. If you've been kicked out of a law firm, it's maybe because the people you're working for don't see you as an advocate for them, but they also don't see you as an advocate for their clients. And law firms basically, and all employers will send people away that they don't see as their advocates and advocating for them. They just don't. So they will get rid of those people. And that's just how it works. And this is how it's going to work in your life. If you have someone working for you, let's just something as simple as some sort of, maybe you have a bookkeeper that works for you, I don't know, or an accountant. And all the accountant does is give you bad news behind your back. No, you would not, or have a nanny that's doing it. Don't do it. If you're an attorney without business, you need to be able to be an advocate for your clients. That's your job. Now, there's not all attorneys that have business. Some people, their skills are different, and that's okay. But you need to be seen as an advocate, and you need to position yourself as an advocate. And clients, sorry, I'm just giving you this advice, and it could change your life if you're in your career. But clients care about who's going to be excited about my issue, who's going to want to help me the most, who's going to believe in me. This is what all clients want. It's what you would want. And the one thing that attorneys need to be, it's what it's called being an advocate. In French, I will say, this is what you are. You're an advocate. You have to be able to believe in clients. You have to believe in your employers. And if you can't do that, you're going to fail. So I just want to make it pretty freaking clear. You can coast like those attorneys I talked to you about in Texas with their big degrees and stuff. You can coast. You can maybe go somewhere in Yale Law School. You can go around and debate things in government offices. But you have to be an advocate. This is what politicians need to be. Now, when Trump was running, I remember the first election against all of these, and again, I'm not political one side or another, but he painted a picture of people as tired and lazy, all of his opponents, and made them look like they weren't advocates and made it look like he stood for something. Like some politicians that succeed stand for something, and they're advocates for something. They're advocates for groups. They're advocates, and they mean it. And whether it's a Republican or a Democrat, and if the only way you're going to succeed as an attorney, only freaking way you're going to succeed. And I just want to be very clear, and this is extremely important. The only way you're going to succeed is if you're able to be an advocate and seen as someone that will go all out, that will do whatever it takes, that believes in them. And this is where money, fame, success comes from. It doesn't come from going to a great law school or getting a job with a great law firm. None of that matters. It doesn't come from having a big time clerkship on the Supreme Court. I've had Supreme Court clerks work for me that didn't understand this and didn't succeed in their lives. I had actually 2 Supreme Court clerks work for me. They came to practice. I was like, holy shoot, I got to pick these people up and call them. But I'm just telling you, if you don't have this and you're not an advocate, and you will not understand when you're failing. Why am I failing? Should I be failing? I have all these big degrees. I've done this. I've done everything right. No, you're not seen as an advocate for the people you're working for. You're not going out and being an advocate and finding things that are good about people you're trying to hire, clients you're trying to get. If your peers see you as an enemy, again, this is how people make enemies. If you go out and you say something or someone feels like you don't have their back or you're against them or you're in a social situation, they're not going to like you. And that's not smart. Same thing with subordinates. If your subordinates need to feel like you have their back. People that are working for you need to feel like you will support them, stick up for them if you want them to like you and help you. And all this stuff, incredibly important. So the only way to get ahead in the legal profession, giving you all these examples, I've spent a lot of time on it because I'm showing you what happens when people don't do it and how they fail and how it just happens. And if you're not an advocate, you're not going to succeed. This is the number one job of an attorney. This is why you go to practice court and you show how to argue for people. This is why just need to be on their side to be an advocate. Law firms initially will hire people because they look like they'll be good advocates. They want people they want. It means being a hard worker is being a good advocate. So go to school and get good grades. That means you can probably get behind your clients and figure things out and work hard, not quit. And all these things are important. They're signs you could be a good advocate. It means that you have the ability to represent the firm, be proud of it, represent the clients. You're out for everyone's interests. And honestly, this is the most basic requirement of being an attorney. It's really the only thing that matters, but you have to be smart and hardworking. But very few people do this. Instead of worrying about being an advocate and that money will follow, again, think of the episode of the guy that I hired from England that came over to say, make $50,000 a year, showed me over the course of a year how he freaking would advocate for me like crazy, and then tripled or quadrupled the salary because he did that. And he just advocated first and knew that if he was an advocate, money would come. This is how it works. You can take a job, doesn't make a lot of what you think, but if you're like an advocate, people are going to want to reward you. They're not going to want to let you go. If someone's helping you and advancing you, they're not going to want to let you go. So people will worry about things, money, how others perceive them, whether or not they're working on something politically correct. I've seen that too. I've seen people get fired from firms because they don't believe in a certain case or a client. They'll worry about politics, the clients they're working for. And if the law firm hires you, the only thing they want to believe is that you're going to represent their interests. The people that hire you and the attorneys that are above you want to believe that you represent their interests. They will look for sometimes background things. Attorneys, I've seen some of the strangest things, like a law firm in Minneapolis with a bunch of people that went to Duke, Virginia, like University of North Carolina. Bizarre, right? Because they're not Southern schools, but the people will hire people like that because they feel like they have their similar backgrounds. People will look when you go into neighborhoods, when you go into certain jobs, you look for commonalities. It could be schools, shared interests, people of religion. I was in a law firm. The second law firm that I was in, Dewey Ballantyne, which is no longer in existence. I couldn't believe it when I figured out that almost every single one of the partners was Catholic. That was weird, right? It just didn't make a lot of sense, but they had these shared interests or religion. People will often dress in a similar way because they want to be around others that believe are part of their tribe, whether it's ethnic or religious or school-based, or law firms are composed of former college athletes. It's bizarre, but people want people that they're going to identify with and they feel will be similar to them and that won't be adverse to them, will share their perspective. And if you show you're not this person, you will often not get hired if the firm knows what it's doing. I had someone tell me once, couldn't believe it, but it was true. I sent a candidate on interview at a firm in LA that had it's in West LA, probably 60 people in the office, and just interviewed this candidate. They said, well, just a bunch of guys of this religious background, and we could never hire someone like that. To say it wasn't a fit because of the religion. Okay. If people want to hire people that they think are similar to them, will support them. And it's just how it is and have their back. This is how it is. This is what you need to do to succeed. And clients as well will also only hire people that they believe are going to have their back. And they'll keep people around who look like they'll have their back and do good work and help them. They want attorneys who understand them, that bond with them, but take their side. They want to be defended and looked out for. They wanted the person who seems they can get most behind their client is always the one that's going to get repeat business and get the most clients, but attorneys who can't seem to lose. One thing, just as an aside, and I'm sure if you're a litigator, you've seen firms do this. When a firm takes a matter on another wing to get the client all fired up and ready to spend money, and hopefully this is natural, but they will aggressively take the side of the client regardless as good attorneys, and will argue and write long letters before litigation even starts. Because they want the client to believe in them and they want to get all fired up, even though a lot of these cases can settle very quickly for very little money. And attorneys will hire and keep attorneys around if they believe they're going to be good advocates. This is all clients want. They want people that are going to fight for them and bond with them, take their side, try to charge them fairly. and look out for them. And the people that seem the most like that, whether it's a law firm or a client, is going to get the most repeat business. If an attorney can't do this, they're going to lose. I once was on a mediator, and the mediator, I asked about one of the best attorneys in Los Angeles in his practice area. Actually, the guy's name was Kolodny. He's no longer alive, but he was a divorce attorney. And this mediator said that when this guy takes the case, he gets himself into a white hot frenzy, and he can't even accept any arguments about why his client's right. He just won't even listen to it. It just doesn't matter. And then if the other side is wrong, regardless of what the issue is, he will continue arguing against the other side. And the judge said that he's the best attorney he knows, and the only one he's ever met who just is like this. And you know, he because of this insane frenzy that he enters into, he's had this reputation as someone that was incredible. And he kept raising his rates. You get all these people coming in. He was making 500, then he would just send 50, 1,000, 1,500. And people just kept coming to him because he just believes in his clients so much. He can't even listen to arguments that are against them. And this is how incredible this guy is. Now, I'm going to tell you something that's not friendly, but it's actually pretty crazy what I'm about to tell you. But this particular attorney, I remember I was talking to another attorney about him, and he is just so freaking aggressive and just demeaning to the other side. Attorney said that he was a husband who was being sued for divorce by the wife, and that litigation and that put so much pressure on him that the guy that he was being litigated on a husband, he was suing for divorce, actually committed suicide. He was so stressed out. Now, I'm not saying that's a good thing, but I'm just telling you, some people are so good at being attorneys, and they get so freaking wound up that this reputation that they become the best there is, and the person that everybody wants, because very few people do this. This particular guy does this. He builds this incredible amounts of money to drive around LA in a Rolls Royce, which is freaking ridiculous for an attorney, but this is what he did. But he would go to the office and probably work 12 hours. He would drive to work in the morning, and when it was dark out, and probably drive back when it was dark. He was frenzy of his work. But a lot of attorneys, they think that if they just stand around, people will come to them and give them business because they have these good pedigrees. Very common. And you just can't fake believing your clients. You can't fake being a good advocate. I've hired so many attorneys in the past. I made this mistake myself. Hired people that weren't good advocates. I didn't understand that it was all about being an advocate. It's very important. The senior attorneys will advance. If you work for other attorneys and you're younger, all you need to do is be an advocate for someone. People becoming an advocate of a certain attorney. Now, this is extremely important. So I want to make sure that if you are watching this particular thing that I'm going to cover right now, could change the course of your life. I mean, it really could. I have met so many attorneys, partners at the biggest law firms, successful partners, very successful partners, people that have followed one attorney their entire career. They worked for them when they were in, and then 40 years later, they're still working for the same partner, going to. So in most law firms, you need to become a partner, not all of them, but you'll need someone who's a sponsor. Sometimes you need more than one sponsor. But what that means is there's someone, hopefully some business and a lot of power in the firm, but someone to sponsor you and to basically make an argument for you about why you should be a partner in the firm. And they will give reasons. Could be that we need someone that can do this work. It could be that they do reasons to make you a partner. And this is very important. You typically need people that will stand up for you and say, this person is incredible. This is the reason why. And the only way you get that, by the way, is if you are working very hard for that partner and have their back, represent, make them feel good, treat them like a good client, work hard for them, get everything done, be on their beck and call. And very few people do this. They think, oh, I'm not going to work weekends. I'm not. Great. Then you're setting your freaking self up for a life of not being in control necessarily of your destiny. So many people that do this when they're young. I could sit here and talk to you and list names of partners for probably an hour and tell you their stories of people that became partners in big law firms by following and supporting other people and their senior one person off and working hard for them, and then staying with that one person for the rest of their career, getting business from them, or person retires and gives them a huge book of business. I talked to a woman yesterday that was doing estate planning and for this one woman partner, and she's an associate. She's a second-year attorney. The partner gave notice to the firm, so they were going to leave in 3 months. They were wrapping. They wanted to start their own firm, and then the firm basically kicked the person out on the street. The partner fired them, very contentious, and then the partner used to give a portion of their work, so they would have litigation, trust in estates, and they would have corporate-related work and all these things. And the partner left and said, I don't want to do this. And they, of course, fired the associate too, because there was no work for her, and gave her all this work to do on her own. So even though she was fired, this second-year associate had all this work, and now was taking a book of business for another firm just because she had this woman's back while she was working for it. The judge I worked for, I told you, person that worked for me that was conservative, and the other clerk had the judge's back. He gave her a recommendation to a good firm. All this stuff. See, if you work for a senior attorney and you have their back and you do every freaking thing that you can to help them, it's going to change your life and your career because they can help you. I had a cousin of mine was in Sherman Sterling in Hong Kong, and they let go all of their capital markets people because of this recession or whatever, or this work slowed down, where he worked for a partner that did nothing but help this guy, working very hard. But the partner didn't have the work. Partner set him up with a job that he's been in on an exotic island where he's doing insurance. He's a general counsel of some company, making 7 figures plus, just a great life and career, all because of helping one person. This is how it works. I talk to people every single freaking day that are successful because they were someone's advocate that they were working for. It's just, it goes on. I hear it over and over again. And the people that fail never did that. They never got behind one person. They never learned how important this was. They never did it. People that work for me, my advocate, I've had people working for me and doing a good job that I don't need in 20 years that are my advocate. If they weren't, then they wouldn't. People that aren't just don't do that. So think about this. Here's my company that's 25 years old or whatever it is. And there's people that have been with me for 24 years, 23 years. And I'm their advocate and they're my advocate. And that's why it works. And in between, there's been hundreds, if not thousands of people that came and weren't advocates. So this is what you need to do. You need to be someone's advocate. This is how you stay employed. This is how you have security. This is how you grow your book. And if you're in a law firm and you're an advocate for the right person, you're never going to have to worry about employment stability, even if you have to leave, like my cousin did. So instead of understanding this rule, attorneys just are out there, like sometimes they're reading like about law and doing all this stuff, and writing comments and looking at negative information and talking negatively about their firm, going to people's office and closing the door so they can gossip. No, this does not work. You have to be on other people's side. I've seen so many people become partners in law firms and go from incredible income. Just, you need to support others and be on someone else's advocate. You need to do this for the people you work with. You need to do this for your clients. The second you break this rule, you're going to have problems. At any job, people will all the time bite the hand that feeds them. Completely insane. People that do that are expelled from firms, viruses, and this is frankly why most people lose their jobs. This is it, folks. This is why people succeed. They don't. Either you're an advocate for your employer, and then you become an advocate for clients, or you're not. If you do this with the right attorney in your law firm, someone who has business, someone who's connected, someone who has pull, you will become very successful because that person will stick up for you. If you think you're just working for some random partner, like some income partner or someone that has no pull, you're making a mistake. This is another key that can change your career. I'm going to say it right now. if you work for a law firm and you maybe cut your teeth, like learning how to do some practice or some work with an income partner or a senior associate, but then when you get really freaking confident, you go in and work for an important partner, then you will become very successful. I can think of, I used to work at Emmanuel. I know multiple stories, people that got very close to the founder of the firm, John Quinn, and did really good work for him and worked really hard and busted their butt and became partners in that firm and made very big money based on. I know one of them that close to me that retired at the age of freaking 45. I mean, you have to be people's advocate, and you have to be an advocate, especially if you're working a law firm for senior attorneys in power and then for clients. And again, you're going to be kept around by any firm in advance if the firm thinks you're an advocate. It's just how it works. And I made this point already. I'm going to start with this presentation because I think you probably get the point by now. I remember I worked in when I was first job, and I was a summer associate. I worked in a New York law firm. And even back then, actually, no, I'm sorry. This is a firm I worked with as a recruiter. And this law firm had installed what the screen recording software, meaning to record people's screens while I worked. It wasn't something that they would monitor, but they kept it because of working with clients and making sure confidential information wasn't spread around and that sort of thing. And one day there was a news story that broke about private rumors. I don't know what it was about, but it was about sex racism or something. I don't really remember. And the law firm said they figured out that someone in the law firm had contacted that news site or whatever it was, and I fired the person who sent the news about the rumor to the site because they had recorded their software. And obviously what the firm was seeing is that, first of all, the person shouldn't have done that, but they were adverse to that law firm. And if you were really an advocate of the firm, you would spin the news and make it seem positive and have the back of their employers as their advocates. If you're not a firm's advocate and they catch you doing that, you're going to lose your job. But in addition, this is how it works. The only way that organizations and law firms and things succeed over time is by pushing out people who aren't supporting them. And they'll do that with you. If you feel like they're unhappy, they're going to push you out and want to keep around people that are enthusiastic. And anytime a law firm or any employer experiences financial issues and different things, they'll keep people around who support them and push around those who don't. And it's just how it works. And sometimes people will get very down on their firms or their employers that may have been around 100 years or more. And it's just dumb because there's people that can remain dedicated to employers regardless of those who not. And again, you have people's back. You look out for your employer. And I can't tell you how many people I've seen succeed who are able to look like they're helping others. I've seen multiple partners, the partners that I meet. And again, I'm telling you this because I've had the experience. This is what I do. I'm become a recruiter, but I also, as part of my job, I talk to partners in law firms all the time. And I talk to very important law partners in law firms, and they all really have a couple stories, and I'll just tell you what they are. So one story the partners have about how they became successful is that they worked very hard for some partner that gave them work for retiring, that maybe moved and gave them work. They gave them work that they had this partner's back and really did a good job for them and worked hard, and that partner helped them. That's one way. The other way that I remember that I've heard quite a bit is they basically will go find clients and they will help clients for free when the client needs help. Sometimes there'll be issues with the general counsel, losing a job for some reason. And even though the law firm lawyer's not working for them at the moment, they're able to plug them into some other job and help them, all these sorts of things. But people get ahead by being the advocate of others. This is how it works. This is how it works in every company. This is how it works in every law firm. This is what you need to do. And I saw one of the person who was managing partner of practice group. I think he was a managing partner of my corporate practice group. It was one of the 10 largest law firms in the world. And he literally lost his job because he was brought out to go on a pitch of another attorney. And he had some sort of personal feud with that attorney. And so he made sure that he undermined that pitch and made it not work out when they went to pitch a client. And this got him fired by the entire firm. So because he was not an advocate for his peer, which probably wasn't a big thing, then I've heard the ability to bring in a huge client that would have built tens of millions of dollars a year. And firms, attorneys, if you are looking out for people and covering their back, you will sometimes get incredible access to information and things that you normally wouldn't if you're doing that in a firm. And all this is about being advocates to your peers. So just a few more slides and then we'll break and come to questions. I know this has been a fairly long webinar. I think it's extremely important. And I think it's important that you have all these examples because this is what it's all about. This one thing is why people stay in law firms, why they get clients, why the fans, why they don't. It's just this. And it's so stupid. No one talks about this, but it's just what it is. So when I first started practicing law, I remember I worked with a very well-known attorney and I asked him a few questions about how to take a deposition. He answered my questions truthfully. And then I really thought nothing else about it after that. But I got into the office the next morning and he'd left me. This is a major partner in this law firm at one of the top 5. And he'd left me, again, keep in mind, I'm basically out of clerkship. I guess I'm a second-year associate, but I'm very green. He left me a series of 2 or 3 10-minute voicemails because the voicemails were always cut off at 10 minutes and just about how to take a deposition. So he couldn't build this time. He was just leaving me these long voicemails. And what I realized at that point was how much he cared about his job, how much he was an advocate for the firm, how much he was an advocate for associates and things. And he was a good person. And he was an advocate, not even for just firm, he was an advocate for the legal profession. And throughout the rest of my time there, he just continued to help me. And he was selfless. And then when I left the firm, I stayed in touch with him. Some to this day, I've sent him work. I've had him do work for me. And he even had the opportunity to give him advice about his career, introduce him to people. Like I've done all this stuff for him because of what he did for me. I support him and I'm his advocate because he supported me. And this is what people do. I remember when I was in this fraternity, there was a guy that had written this very good essay that they have these things, why they want to join and stuff. But when he was young and I found that the firm had all these filing cabinets where they kept information. So I found it. And when I was president of the fraternity, I read it to everyone that was in this meeting. And it didn't say who it was, but said, this is what this place means and everything. And this is such a great guy. And I didn't say who it was from, but he always remembered it. And this particular guy, throughout every time I've seen him, has always gone out of his way to be very nice to me. Not only that, but he came to my second wedding. I didn't invite anybody because it was my second wedding in a couple of years. It's embarrassing, but always have my back because I had his back at one time. I'm sure you can think of examples like that yourself. I have someone that I went to high school with that I supported when everyone didn't like them and was very nice to him. And that person became someone that always had my back. Most of my positive contacts in my life, a lot of them are people that have had my back. I had a similar experience with the attorney with an English teacher I grew up. He spent 4 or 5 hours correcting a paper that I wrote, just some simple English paper. It probably took more than 5 hours, but he did this with each paper I wrote. He had a bachelor's degree and a master's degree from Yale, a PhD from University of English and English. And yet he was spending so much time with my papers and he didn't have to do this. Didn't make any sense, but he didn't do it just me, do it with everyone. And then he would type a lengthy review of the paper and that I wrote and staples in the back. And so he was an advocate for the teaching profession. He was an advocate for English language. He was an advocate for making people improve. And when I applied to colleges, he wrote me a 7-page single-spaced letter and I couldn't believe it. And then when he died a few years ago, I flew all the way to Michigan, even though he died in Monterey, California, teaching the school there. But they had a memorial set out in the library of the school where you could write things, I don't know, scrapbooks or something. And I wrote his family a long letter about how much he taught me. And I never met someone who's a better advocate than one. So the point of all this is the most critical component of your professional career and your success is being an advocate and taking the side of your clients, your employer, peers, and everyone. This is what it's all about. These are the people that stay employed in my company in advance. These are the people that stay employed in every law firm in advance. These are the people that get clients. It's the most important possible thing you can do. And unfortunately, very few people do this. They're an advocate for themselves. But it's dumb as that seems, this is what most people do. They want to be advocates for themselves. You're an attorney. Like, sure, you need to be an advocate for yourself when you're trying to get a job. But the only way you're going to get a job is if someone sees you being an advocate for them. And so people have all these problems in their career. They're fired from jobs, they're unemployed, they're not advancing. Yes, of course you're not. You're no one's advocate. Like you're not doing the things right. And this is people keep people around that they're advocate. You need advocates. Children, their parents are their advocates. The parents stick up for them. If the child's accused of a crime, they sit with the child. They support them. And that's why people need parents. They need people to support them. That's what you need when if a parent doesn't believe in their child, the child is often devastated and has problems. That kids that are adopted sometimes, or working in foster homes, someone's their advocate. You have to be an advocate for your children and always believe in them. And your parents need to believe in you, and you need to believe this is what it's all about. And you want a significant other that believes in you, and you want, in order to have better relationships, you need to have people that are advocate. Your friends need advocates. You're going to lose friends if they don't see it. The second you look disloyal or something to a friend, then you're not their advocate any longer. And you're going to lose them. All of this, you'll get friends and other people see you as their advocate. And your success and happiness is really all about the ability to be an advocate for others, because you only get success and happiness when you're an advocate for other people. Again, I keep coming back to the idea of politicians. Think of politicians. Think of the ones that are the most successful. They come across as advocates for different types of people. And this is what I've talked about today. And I believe in my heart that if you are not anywhere near as successful as you want to be, if you are going to be successful as a lawyer, if you're going to be successful in life, you really need to understand how important it is to be an advocate for others. So I'll take a quick break. When I come back, we will answer questions. The questions can be about this or anything else we cover. I will make the slides of this available too later on the website, but I would encourage you to ask any questions that you have about this webinar or anything else that you have related to your career. It looks like there's already some questions, which is good. So I will be back in just one moment. All right, so give me just 1 second. I will set up the questions so we can questions. Also, one thing I wanted to also bring to everyone's attention is that we will be doing this. We typically do our revs every quarter. So I think we'll probably do the next one, probably do it either next week or the week after. If you send, I will give everyone, tell you where to send your resume. This has been a fairly long webinar, which I think is an important webinar, but if you send I'll give you an email address to send your resume if you're on this call, because I know this has been a long webinar. So if you send your resume, then I'll make sure we do the resume workshop. The resume workshop is always a lot of fun because we're able to make really, I think, very significant changes to people's resume that can make a huge difference, be a game changer. So I'll send you guys where to send that in a second. So the email address to send your resume, so I would just put in there, or just put the subject line, resume workshop. And then I would send it and I will make sure that we review it in the resume workshop. And Jared, we will do questions right now. So 1 second. Okay, first question. Asking before the webinar. Should not advocacy already be considered a given, considering many ethics and discipline boards that require changes to those? The only reason that people fail to be advocates is generally they are either advocates for themselves, or no one. That's the symptom. And this goes for people that are not just attorneys, but also people that may be practicing in doing other types of jobs. Okay, this is a question that someone asked here. It says, I've been using the same resume format for years, not getting many callbacks. Could it be that my resume is outdated? What are the latest trends in legal resumes? I would recommend coming to the resume workshop. We'll cover a lot on that. Resumes that fail to get, they're often too long. Too long. Many times if the job is requiring a certain practice area, the resume is talks about too many practice areas and it should look like generals. Those are some of the things that can hurt people. So those are some of the main things that hurt people. I would recommend going to the resume workshop. That's the next question. Here are some things for this webinar. I've always struggled with balancing showcasing my pro bono work and my lectural law firm experience on a resume. How can I effectively highlight both that out, underscore my personal achievements, wanting to demonstrate my commission to social causes. I mean, this is a good question, actually. And social causes and the need to impress potential employers with my legal skills. Okay, so most law firms, this is an important thing to understand. A lot of people make mistakes about this. So there's nothing wrong with being interested in social causes unless those types of social causes could be polarized into a law firm. So there's nothing wrong with being committed to social causes. But what you need to worry about, in my opinion, is if that's detracting from looking like you're committed to a law firm. So if you were a law firm, the number one thing that you would be concerned about, most employers, is you want to make sure that the person working for you is committed to whatever you're doing. So if someone's very interested in pro bono work, they're not going to be available to do something else. In general, and this depends on where you're at, what kind of firms you're trying to work for, but in general, law firms and the people you're working for want you committed to them and not to people. You could be in a romantic relationship, but in order for one to advance, you'd probably need to be committed to have one person as opposed to multiple people. So it's difficult. So most employers do not want you to be that interested in pro bono thing. Now, there's nothing wrong with being somewhat interested in pro bono or doing pro bono. If you are, for example, in a litigation and the pro bono enables you to go to court and do other things you might not. But most employers, if you're doing the pro bono, I wouldn't recommend in most cases advertising that, because the law firm wants someone. If you were a law firm, you would want someone that's more likely to be committed to working for them as opposed to social causes. Now, there are law firms where everyone does pro bono, and you may want to find something like that. But in general, people aren't going to be you're going to turn off a lot of potential employers if you're putting a lot of the stuff to do with social causes on it. Okay, here we go. There have been instances where recruiters have misrepresented my qualifications to law firms, leading to awkward situations during interviews. What strategies can I employ to collaborate with recruiters who prioritize honesty and accuracy in presenting my profile? Okay, so there's a couple of different things. With recruiters, as opposed to all types of professions, you can work desperate recruiters or candidates, et cetera, and can work with people that are not non-desperate recruiters. So you have both, or it's a mix, or it could be a mix. We don't know. But the problem with recruiters that are misrepresenting your background is they're typically doing that if they don't have a lot of candidates, or it might just be something they do. Recruiters, unfortunately, I'm one of them, so I'm not saying unfortunately, but they are salespeople, and their job as salespeople is to try to sell things, which are people. So they will do things in a manner that sometimes is inappropriate. So you have to understand how a recruiter is going to present you and what they're going to say that the law firm wants. So how do you fix that? Typically, not all recruiters, but I would say a good percentage, when they represent you to firm, the recruiter will write a cover letter that describes your background, cover letter that talks about so that's the first thing that's important to understand. Because of that, you will have the ability to go over that with them and to talk about it if you want. Most unfortunately, that's what I would recommend doing to see what the recruiter's saying about you. And if you read those cover letters, you may find that there's misspellings. You may find that they've made mistakes, and that is going to impact how you feel about them. I remember it's a funny story, but when I was looking for, because I quit my job working for a law firm. And when I quit, got picked for Gilly Valentine. the managing partner at the office came by my office and said, "Hey, you can't quit." He did this like one of the last 2 days I was there. He said, "You can't quit because if you quit, everyone's going to think you're fired. So why don't you take some time and look for another job?" And I thought, okay, I'll do that. So I went around talking to recruiters, and then I decided to go on a bunch of interviews. And then when I was in one of the interviews, I remember asking to see the cover letter because it was sitting on someone's desk, and it said all the stuff that wasn't true. They'd clerked in Wisconsin or something. When I clerked in Michigan, there were just all these mistakes and misspellings and things. And what I read, and it was by a recruiter that had been ranked by some magazine is the best recruiter in the country. And I thought, this is just Looney Tunes. And so I realized that the quality of work was not very good. So you can ask the recruiter that you're working for a copy of whatever they're sending out on your behalf. And sometimes they'll not give it to you. But if you are concerned, you should ask them what they're sending out and ask to see it, because that's going to give you an indication of how that recruiter is representing you, which I would recommend doing, because once you see that, you're going to have a good idea of how the recruiter, what the recruiter is saying and what they're representing. The problem with recruiters, a big problem, is a lot of them, they'll call you on the phone or whatever, and they're eager to get your resume. Once they get your resume, then they will send you to a bunch of places that you approve, hopefully, but a lot of times they won't get your approval. We require everyone to approve firms on our website through a portal, but sometimes you want to get everything in writing. But the point is that you may want to see the work that they're doing, because that's very important in what they have. We have people fill out questionnaires and similar stuff, so we know exactly everything about their background, but you need to be very careful about that. You don't want recruiters that are misrepresenting you. The other thing I would say is recruiting is like anything. The best people are in the most demand. The best people I hate to say it, but are going to have more than enough people to work with. They'll have people they've placed before that are coming back to them. They will have people that are hear about them through other people they work with that are coming to them. So the best recruiters out there will get lots of referrals. They don't need to worry about calling you on the phone. Now, if they have a perfect job for you, like you're like a rare type of attorney in an unusual city or something, then that's one thing. But the best recruiters typically are not going to be contacting you unless it's something very unusual, because they're going to have plenty of their own work. But they're just going to be, it's just the best people, like anything, people are going to go after them. If you were like trying to be in Hollywood or something, everyone tries to be an agent. They want to get the best agent possible. And certain agents are better than others, and it's just how it works. Okay, I have found that some recruiters lack the insight to recognize the nuances of different law firms' cultures and requirements. Yes. How can I work with you to thoroughly understand the specific needs of each firm, ensuring a better match for both parties? Okay, so that's a good question, but unfortunately, there are so many different cultures and different firms. In Los Angeles, I mean, there's thousands of law firms that our company works for, and you can't possibly understand. It's very difficult for anyone to understand the culture of any law firm, both law firms. So I understand the cultures of law firms, but cultures can change. So you have to, most recruiters are not going to have that insight. And unfortunately, I will be honest with you that there's so many law firms, I don't think it'll be possible for anybody to understand that. It's important, but I think it's something that you need to learn from going on interviews. I'm trying to look at the questions and see, and they're on another screen. This person says, I have other situations where advocating for my client's interests clash with expertise of my employer. How can I navigate these conflicts? Yeah, this is a question, but it's the point, I think, is that you want to work different attorney partners. Other people will work for firms where often there are conflicts. They'll have clients or with their conflicts with the firm. And in that case, a lot of times people leave the firms they're with. Okay, so let's see here. I think that's about all the questions that we have. So I certainly appreciate everyone being here. I apologize that it was such a long presentation, but I thought it was very important. There will be a replay of this, I think, online at some point. And then the other thing I want to bring up is we'll be having our resume workshop soon. So I hopefully I put the email there on the screen at Jared at Barrister Consulting. So if you send your resume, I'll send you on this particular webinar prior to the webinar. I will make sure that I review yours if it comes in the next day or so, because you spent either on this webinar today. Thank you everyone for being on the webinar, and I will talk to you next week. This was a long enough topic. I will try to make next week will probably be, want to make it shorter and not as long, so we can hopefully have more time for Q&A. Thank you everyone, and talk to you soon.